All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to all my listeners. This is episode 4 in season 3. Today is Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. My name is Sonal Patel, and this is the Paint the Medical Picture podcast series. All right, you guys, this is another big episode. It is the end of the month, right? The end of September is already here. So in today's episode, my Newsworthy focuses on the fraud, waste, and abuse highlights for the entire month of September. And of course, I'm going to be spotlighting some of those from the month's criminal and civil enforcement cases that I find newsworthy. And in my Trusty tip, I'm going to be going over the latest billing and coding tips for influenza or those flu vaccines. And I'm going to go ahead and close out and round out today's episode with a remarkable quote on insights and wisdom by Benjamin Franklin. Today's episode is sponsored by HCPro. This September, harvest big savings with Actus and HCPro bootcamps. Are you ready to elevate your career? Actus and HCPro bootcamps offer expert instruction designed to give you the practical skills and insights to excel in the fields of CDI, in coding, and in Medicare compliance. And with HCPro's exclusive seasonal sale, there's never been a better time to invest in your professional growth. And for a limited time only through the end of this month, through the end of September 30th, there are live and virtual online bootcamp formats. And they're all buy one, get one 50% off. So enroll in one course and you'll get the other at half price. Simply apply the coupon code SONAL50 during your checkout process. And if you prefer a more immersive hands-on learning experience, HCPro's live in-person boot camps format is now 30% off. So there are so many classes that you can choose from for the entire remainder of this month. So don't miss out on this opportunity and apply another coupon code SONAL30 during your checkout if you're interested in those live in-person boot camps. Now, don't miss out on expert-led training, actionable knowledge, and a flexible learning environment tailored to fit your schedule and your learning style. The sale ends very soon on September 30th, so act fast. Now, HCPro and Actus bootcamps are the training you need to advance your career, and they're available in the formats that best suit your learning style. Harvest savings and your professional success by registering today. All right, you guys, let's get into it. So let's get into today's newsworthy, the month's fraud, waste, and abuse cases. The month of September saw 36 cases as of the recording of this episode. Now, early September saw a former chief operating officer of COVID-19 testing kit company sentenced to more than 6 years in federal prison for embezzling $1.85 million. The former chief operating officer of a suburban Chicago company that sold COVID-19 testing kits was sentenced to more than 6 years in federal prison for embezzling more than $1.85 million in company funds. Now, while on pretrial and pre-sentencing release for an earlier fraud scheme, this man issued fraudulent payments from the Chicago company's bank account for services and goods purportedly provided by himself or the company's main vendor, a manufacturer from whom the company purchased COVID-19 testing kits. In reality, the services and goods had not been provided. The money purportedly sent to the testing kit supplier was wired to a bank account that the man controlled, and he spent those funds for his personal benefit. In addition to the wire funds, the man issued checks drawn from the company's bank account to himself, knowing that he would spend the money for his personal benefit. He concealed his fraud by making false and misleading statements on the checks and to the company's president. In all, this man embezzled and fraudulently misappropriated more than $1.85 million from the company in 2021 and 2022. The man pleaded guilty earlier this year to a wire fraud charge and admitted that he committed the offense while on pretrial and pre-sentencing release. The U.S. District Judge on the case sentenced him to 6 years and 5 months in federal prison. Now, he must serve the sentence after completing his federal sentence for the earlier fraud scheme. In the prior case, he pleaded guilty to wire fraud and money laundering charges for swindling hospitals that had paid him millions of dollars for scarce personal protective equipment, or PPE, in the early weeks of the COVID-19 pandemic back in 2020. He was sentenced in December 2022 to nearly 5 years in federal prison. Now, early September also saw a medical device company to pay $700,000 to resolve False Claims Act allegations concerning inflated reimbursements from Medicare and Medicaid. A medical device manufacturer has agreed to pay $700,000 to resolve allegations that it violated the False Claims Act by knowingly causing physicians to use incorrect codes to obtain inflated reimbursement from Medicare and state Medicaid programs for the use of its hemorrhoid removal system called Slide 1 Kit. I'm just going to call it the kit here. The kit was sold to physicians for use in transanal hemorrhoidal dearterialization, a surgical procedure that involves cauterizing certain blood vessels. The United States alleged that between 2014 and 2017, physicians performing procedures using the kit were required to bill for the procedure using a temporary code, also known as a T code, assigned for new and emerging services. Because a procedure that is assigned such a code, again, a T code, that's T as in Tom, it's considered to be experimental, and reimbursement for the use of the kit was often denied. Now, to avoid such denials and increase potential reimbursement, this company allegedly encouraged colorectal and general surgeons improperly to bill Medicare and Medicaid programs for using this T code plus an additional CPT code, or current procedural terminology code, to bill for those CPT codes also in addition to that T code. Now, the federal share of the civil settlement is over $598,000, and the state Medicaid share of the civil settlement is just over $100,000. State Medicaid programs are jointly funded by the federal and state governments. Now, the principal deputy assistant attorney general on this case stated, quote, "The integrity of federal healthcare programs depends upon compliance with coding and billing rules that are used to make coverage and reimbursement decisions," end quote. He later continues on and states, quote, "We will hold accountable healthcare providers that knowingly submit false claims to federal healthcare programs that do not accurately reflect and bill for the work they perform," end quote. The civil settlement includes the resolution of claims brought under the QTAM or whistleblower provisions of the False Claims Act by a former employee of the company. Now, under those provisions, a private party can file an action on behalf of the United States and receive a portion of any recovery. The relator's share here from the proceeds of this settlement will be $115,000 and a little bit of change. Now, the resolution obtained in this matter was the result of a coordinated effort between the U.S. Attorney's Office of the District of Maryland and the Civil Division's Commercial Litigation Branch Fraud Section, with assistance from the HHS OIG. Now, the claims resolved by this particular settlement are allegations only. There has been no determination of liability. Now, moving on to mid-September. Mid-September saw a behavioral healthcare company executive charged with healthcare fraud. A behavioral healthcare company C-suite executive was charged in connection with a scheme to defraud healthcare benefit programs by directing false billing for patient visits. This man was charged and has agreed to plead guilty to 6 counts of healthcare fraud. A plea hearing date has not yet been set. According to the charging documents from approximately 2017 to 2022, this man directed a group of individuals with no billing or no medical training to enter CPT codes for therapy services that were not provided and to upcode CPT codes used for psychotherapy visits. It is further alleged that he submitted or directed the submission of false claims for treatment that was not provided or for more complex and expensive treatment than was provided. The charge of healthcare fraud carries a sentence of up to 10 years in prison, up to 3 years of supervised release, and a fine of up to $250,000 or twice the gross gain or loss from the offense. Sentences are imposed by a federal district court judge based upon the U.S. sentencing guidelines and statutes, which govern the determination of a sentence in a criminal case. Now, the details contained in the charging document are allegations only. The defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. Now, moving on further into mid-September. Mid-September again saw another case. This involves an attorney general who secures more than $7.6 million from a health insurer for using a banned Medicaid provider. That's right, you heard me correctly, an insurer. Now, a New York State Attorney General announced a settlement with a health insurer for causing vulnerable Medicaid patients in central New York to receive treatment at a company owned by a social worker who had previously lost his license after being convicted of a crime. It billed Medicaid for services provided by an LLC, even though this LLC company's sole owner and director was then a licensed clinical social worker. Now, he had been excluded from the Medicaid program. This man was banned from being a Medicaid provider in 2017 after being convicted of a misdemeanor for firing a BB gun at a child. Under this particular settlement, the insurer will pay back more than $7.6 million in reimbursements to the Medicaid program. The insurer also agreed to perform systematic status checks of those it contracts with against federal and state lists of providers excluded from Medicaid and terminate any prohibited relationships identified during its reviews. Now, the Attorney General on this case stated, quote, New Yorkers should be able to trust that the doctors and healthcare providers their insurers use are properly licensed and will treat them responsibly. He goes on and states, quote, when companies fail to do their due diligence, patients are at risk of being treated by providers who may be unlicensed or unsafe. This particular settlement sends a clear message that insurers will be held accountable if they do not ensure those in their networks are legally allowed to treat vulnerable Medicaid patients, end quote. Now, healthcare providers can become excluded from the Medicaid program as a result of a fraud or criminal conviction. Managed care organizations like this insurer must terminate their relationships with any excluded provider to ensure that vulnerable patients are not at risk of being sent to unlicensed, fraudulent, or unsafe providers. State and federal laws, as well as this insurer's contract with New York State, require it to conduct routine checks of exclusion lists to identify any of these prohibited relationships and terminate them. The man was a licensed clinical social worker who initially contracted with this managed care organization to provide Medicaid reimbursed services in 2013. In 2014, he pleaded guilty and was convicted of a misdemeanor for attempted endangerment for the attempted endangering the welfare of a child. And on January 10th, 2017, his license was suspended for 12 months by the New York State Office of Professional Discipline. In May 2017, he was excluded from the Medicaid program. However, from February 2019 to July 2021, this MCO continued to pay the man's company for services despite knowing that he was an excluded provider. As a result of the Office of the Attorney General, the OAG's action, the insurer must repay the state Medicaid program, again, over $7 million. It will also have to determine the identity and the exclusion status for all of its participating providers, subcontractors, and anyone with an ownership or managing role as a participating provider or subcontractor. It is then required to terminate its provider agreements with any excluded person and their businesses. Now, more news in mid-September. Mid-September also saw a major retail pharmacy agreeing to pay over $106 million to resolve allegations that it billed the government for prescriptions never dispensed. Now, this major retail pharmacy has agreed to pay over $106 million to resolve alleged violations of the False Claims Act and state statutes for billing government healthcare programs for prescriptions never dispensed. Now, it's headquartered here in Deerfield, Illinois, and operates one of the largest retail pharmacy chains in the country. The government alleges that between 2009 and 2020, it submitted false claims for payment to Medicare, Medicaid, and other federal health care programs for prescriptions that it processed, but that were never picked up by beneficiaries. As a result, it received tens of millions of dollars for prescriptions that it never actually provided to health care beneficiaries. As part of the resolution, it received credit under the department's guidelines for taking disclosure, cooperation, and remediation into account in False Claims Act cases. Among other actions, it implemented enhancements to its electronic pharmacy management system to prevent this from occurring in the future and self-reported certain conduct. Now, because it previously refunded just over $66 million pertaining to the settled claims, it will receive a credit for this amount. The federal share of the recovery is, again, over $91 million, and a total of over $14 million will be returned to individual states, which jointly fund state Medicaid programs through separate settlement agreements with the Medicaid participating states. All right, now there were also many of the other usual suspects as well, from even more False Claims Act cases, opioids cases, more pharmacy and laboratory schemes, elder abuse cases, and a huge case involving improper financial arrangements between a surgical hospital and two physician groups, and even more behavioral health fraud. But I wanted to pay particular attention to another big case on P-STIM devices. This time, it is the distributor in the headlines. Now, late September saw this medical device distributor to pay over $1 million to resolve False Claims Act liability arising from the billing of P-STIM devices. Now, the United States attorney on the case announced that a medical device distributor has agreed to pay over $1 million to resolve liability under the False Claims Act for allegedly causing improper billing of P-STIM devices, in this case branded as ANSI-STIM. Now, from approximately September 1st of 2016 through October 26th of 2016, this company marketed and sold ANSI-STIM devices as reimbursable by Medicare under a code, a CPT code, used for implantable neurostimulator devices, which are surgically implanted into the central nervous system or targeted peripheral nerves through procedures that are typically performed by a surgeon in an operating room. The company's customers applied ANSI-STIM devices using only an adhesive and a limited amount of needles, without any surgery, without any anesthesia, and without the assistance of a surgeon or in an operating room. ANSI-STIM is an electroacupuncture device that, pursuant to manufacturer's instructions, is affixed behind a patient's ear using an adhesive. Needles are inserted into the patient's ear and affixed using another adhesive. Once activated, the ANSI-STIM device then provides intermittent stimulation by electrical pulses. It is a single-use battery-powered device designed to be worn for several days until its battery runs out, at which time the device is then thrown away. Medicare does not reimburse for acupuncture or acupuncture devices like ANSI-STIM or other brand names of this device, including Styvax, NeuroStim, ePulse, and NSS2 Bridge. Now, the U.S. attorney on this case stated, quote, Medicare paid this company's customers hundreds of thousands of dollars for improperly billed acupuncture devices, end quote. The attorney goes on and states, quote, the company, through coverage advisories from medical contractors and communications from medical providers, was on notice that it was promoting and selling anti-stim devices using false reimbursement advice. We will continue working with our partners to hold accountable distributors or marketers who carry out false billing schemes like this one, end quote. Now, the settled civil claims here are allegations only. There has been no determination of civil liability. And now it's time for my best practice tips in Trusty Tip. That's right, it's that time of year again. It's already flu season. Now, your doctor's offices, like mine, have probably already emailed you, or they're going to send you a message soon that your office, your hospital setting, those places are receiving vaccines, or they will shortly be coming in. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of common errors that pop up year after year when it comes to coding and billing for influenza or the flu vaccine. For example, National Government Services, or the NGS MAC here in the Illinois region, has already issued a document for this service. And the document is titled Billing Errors on 2024 through 2025 Influenza Season Claims. Now, this particular document tells us that the influenza season runs from August 1st of each year until July 31st of the following year. Every influenza vaccine is assigned a new NDC code. That means National Drug Code. So this particular season, some codes no longer have a published fee from CMS. When this occurs, National Government Services will manually price your claims until a fee is established. Now, this document goes on and says that they have already received large volumes of claims with the incorrect NDC number or the wrong code based on the NDC for the influenza vaccine for 2024-2025 flu season. So what's inadvertently happening are folks are still using last season's NDC code number, and that is not going to be applicable to this current year's flu vaccines. So if you've received a billing error denial for the last or the current flu season, please verify the correct NDC number and or the correct CPT code is being used. Failure to use the correct CPT and NDC combination and or using the incorrect flu season NDC number will result in a billing error denial. So if you find an error like this, you should be correcting things and resubmitting your claims. Now, the document goes on and says that the 2024-2025 codes without a fee schedule from CMS are CPT code 90672, 90674, 90682, 90686, 90687, 90688, 90694, and 90756. Now, also, as certified coding professionals and amazing billers, you should be aware and bookmark the CMS vaccine pricing webpage for listed fees. Now, all of these codes are not listed there currently, but they will be receiving pricing soon. So check back to that webpage time and time again. Now, as a reminder, be sure that you're using the correct administration code of G0008 for the influenza virus. G0008 must be used as it is not subject to the deductible and the coinsurance. Do not use CPT code 90471 or 90472 for the administration of the influenza vaccine. And finally, I focus season 13 Spark on insights and wisdom. I want this 13th season Spark to be filled with our world's thought leaders, writers, artists, philosophers, everyone whose words provide us with insights and wisdom. So in this week's inspiring quote in Spark is from Benjamin Franklin. He that can compose himself is wiser than he that composes books. Wow. That's pretty accurate, isn't it? I think this quote inspires us to remain cool and collected, even in times of great hardship. This is a skill that should be valued. This is a trait that shows your true character. I'm happy Benjamin Franklin's spark still inspires so many today. All right, you guys, that wraps up today's episode, and that definitely wraps up the month of September. Now, my favorite season of fall, right, has just started up on Sunday. And you know me, I'm hitting all of these local orchards here and these farms. Now, next month, I'm going to be in search of the best fall colors. I hope they'll be peaking in October. Now, there's nothing like crisp fall days to look forward to. All right, you guys, I hope you're all looking forward to the new month that's going to unfold here, the month of October. I can't wait to dedicate my entire month once again, like I've done for every year here on Paint the Medical Picture podcast, to Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Another big thing, another big topic that I love to focus on during this entire month of October. So, all right, you guys, I wish you all an incredible, amazing, happy week ahead. Thank you so much for listening on today's episode. And I hope every week with me brings you closer to helping your providers paint a masterpiece. See you next Wednesday.